the T-Rex right there? See it over there?
Who's the nastiest dinosaur of them all? He was named the Tyrant Lizard King in 1904, and generations ever since have had little cause to argue about the biggest, scariest meat-eater ever, Tyrannosaurus Rex. He's the real-life monster from Central Casting, the bloodthirsty villain of scores of movies. T-Rex has become a toy merchant's dream product line, and lately, even an auctioneer's multi-million-dollar prize.
Tyrannosaurus Rex, known as Sue, $7,600,000.
So what's the source of T-Rex's enduring charm? 7 tons of carnivorous fury, a head the size of a meat locker on a body bigger than a school bus, dagger teeth as long as railroad spikes, capable of ripping off 500 pounds of flesh in a single bite. But 2 new dinosaurs have been unearthed, which may be even larger and just as deadly. They were cousins who lived half a world away from T-Rex and long before it. They pose the most serious challenge ever to the throne of the Tyrant Lizard King. Kids sense what many adults have long forgotten: that dinosaurs are both monsters of the past and mysteries of the present. Frightening, yet safe. Far back in the past, but still very much alive in their minds.
I'd like to buy this.
All right, that'll be $9.50.
Even though they've been shrunk, stuffed, and sold by the millions, dinosaurs hold an enduring source of wonder for the child in all of us.
Thanks, have a good day.
Thanks.
And the bigger and more terrifying the dinosaur, the better. Loving dinosaurs is not the same as knowing them. But once in a while, a young admirer will grow up to be a professional dinosaur hunter. Phil Curry is one who did. He's a paleontologist at the Royal Tyrrell Museum in Alberta, Canada, and the world's leading expert on meat-eating dinosaurs.
When I was a child, I opened up a cereal box one day and there was a plastic dinosaur inside. And the next thing you know, I was getting my parents to buy cereal like crazy until I could acquire most of the set. Unfortunately, Tyrannosaurus Rex was the one I really wanted because one of my friends had it, and it was the neat one.
But today, T-Rex's reign as king of the meat-eaters is in jeopardy. Something Curry knows better than anyone.
For almost a century now, the most famous dinosaur has unquestionably been Tyrannosaurus Rex. The reason for that is that Tyrannosaurus Rex was the largest flesh-eating animal to ever walk the earth, and it conjures up an image of absolute terror. Nevertheless, in the last few years, 2 new animals have been found in the southern hemisphere, and they threaten to dethrone the king.
One of T-Rex's challengers lived in the lush environment of South America nearly 100 million years ago. The other behemoth dominated the river deltas of northern Africa, and until recently, both titans were shrouded in mystery.
This is the big jawbone of the skull that we found in place.
Paul Sereno is a paleontologist from the University of Chicago.
Not only do you see a row of teeth, but you see one just beginning, a fresh tooth just beginning to emerge here from the socket.
In 1995, he plotted an expedition to search for one of T-Rex's challengers in the Sahara Desert. Sereno's expedition would trace the path of European scientists who had discovered a giant dinosaur in North Africa in the early 1900s.
It's a very huge desert, and on this edge, some 40 years ago, French explorers and paleontologists, often single-handedly and sometimes by camel, had come across teeth of an animal they called and dubbed Carcharodontosaurus.
They named the animal for its razor-sharp teeth and because it resembled a much-feared predator of modern-day man.
As the name implies, a Carcharodon means shark, and that's also the genus name of the great white shark living today. The function of the teeth in general is very clear. They're for slicing. They're vertical blades that would have just come down like a pair of scissors. They would have started a small hole here, and it would just cut right along. When the dinosaur closed its jaws, it would have snapped right through bone and flesh.
The explorers boxed up the bones and took them to Germany to be displayed in a museum. But World War II intervened, and in the firestorms of the Great Air War, bombs destroyed the remarkable fossils. The only specimen of the giant and the only possible threat to T-Rex's reign was buried by rubble. Following the scientists' old maps, Sereno would carry on their expedition in the rugged mountains of Morocco. His team headed across the desert, searching the sands, but coming up empty-handed.
What made it especially tough going, in fact, it was physically the toughest expedition I've ever run, was the fact that you were exploring and looking for fossils on the face of a cliff. And your job was to scale that cliff day in and day out in 100 to 120 degree heat, and basically looking for patches of rock that were exposed that might house the bones of animals that we yet really didn't know much about.
Under the blazing sun, Sereno lost nearly a pound a day. Weeks had passed and the team had still found nothing. They were in their last days of prospecting on high cliffs when Sereno finally found a piece of skull.
And I turned it over and I saw this hollowing, and I knew that right away, and also by the sort of the structure of the brain case, that we were dealing with a predatory dinosaur. And the question was this the tail end of a skull that had weathered out millions of years ago, or was this the tip of a skull, the rest of which was in the cliff?
Spread out over the cliff face, the team hunted feverishly for matching pieces.
We were in the last week of the expedition. It could be a thrilling finale to our expedition. I found nothing. I came back and I puzzled over this bone, almost breathless. I went back up the cliff face, and that's when I saw, perched on a little pedestal of rock, a cut face of bone that matched the piece that I was holding in my hand. It was about 20 feet up. And I scaled back up there, and I could fit this piece right on, and I knew that the skull was going into the cliff. So you can look at this. Have you guys seen the teeth? This is incredible. You know, well preserved they are. What we eventually did was go into the side of the cliff. We had to remove tons of rock over this because the skull kept on going in until we could surround the skull and take it down off the cliff. Then this is the right cheek bone with all the teeth in it. And we can see 1, 2, 3, there's a replacing tooth here, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
As difficult as it was to excavate the skull, it was a bigger problem finding the rest of the animal, which was scattered by an ancient river.
What we had was a big river that was transporting lots of bone matter downstream. Most of the time we'd find teeth or small pieces of bone broken up and rolled, sometimes for as many as 50 miles. We unearthed the animal, realizing that it was a big animal, but we didn't really know how large.
The team was fortunate enough to recover crucial parts of the jaw, including the cheekbone, called the jugal, which would help them estimate the total size of the skull. Back in Chicago, when the team measured the jaw and its components, they discovered that the skull was 15% bigger than the specimens destroyed during World War II.
Back in the laboratory, we began to open up the jackets, and by the time we had the big jaw exposed, we had jaws of other predatory dinosaurs in the laboratory, and it was so monstrous compared to these other jaws that we began to realize just, in fact, how big this animal was. I remember calculating one day, once we got the jaw piece and the jugal, and realizing that the skull was over 5 feet long. This was an enormous animal.
On the other side of the globe, in Patagonia, Argentina, another dinosaur find would startle the world. This barren ground is rich hunting for dinosaur fossils. The wind constantly blows across these plains, exposing layers of rock 100 million years old. It was here in 1993 that an amateur dinosaur hunter, Ruben Carolini, stumbled across a huge bone. He called Rodolfo Correa, a South American paleontologist with a passion for dinosaurs.
For me, dinosaurs is the most important thing in the world. Working with dinosaurs, I wanted to do since I was a kid.
As Correa and his team headed across the Badlands, he often thought about what life was like millions of years ago.
As I was driving into the field, I can imagine all these giants walking around and shaking the earth.
Compared to Paul Sereno's excavation high up in the cliffs of Africa, Correa's was less demanding and more rewarding. Not only were the bones lying near the surface, but they formed an astonishingly large percentage of the dinosaur's skeleton.
First time I came here was in August of 1993. In that time, we spent 4 weeks working in this site, and we recovered about 70% of the animal. Now we are looking for some missing part of the skeleton because we didn't find yet any part of the arms of the animal or the feet of the animals.
In just over a month, the crew dug up almost the complete dinosaur. Among the still missing bones is the jugal, which is just as important to Correa as it had been to Paul Sereno. Also like Sereno's find, Correa's dinosaur was discovered in an ancient riverbed, which created problems in finding pieces of the skull.
We saw that the currents of the stream affected more the head part of the body than to the tail. The whole skull was discovered completely disarticulated, and the pieces, every piece of the skull was found separate from the others.
To raise money needed for the reconstruction of the dinosaur, Correa teamed up with an American science writer and dinosaur popularizer, Don Lessem.
You want to try? Find me a jugal, please, Don.
Lessem would help bring the discovery to the world's attention.
Now, if I knew what I was doing, and I had phenomenal luck, I would find the jugal bone. That's what I'm most hoping to find here. And Rodolfo, too, I think. It's the one missing bone from the skull that would tell us even more definitively about the shape of the entire skull.
The death of all dinosaurs is a source of endless mystery and speculation. And despite Correa's discovery of a nearly intact skeleton, he will never know why this animal chose this very spot to lay down and die. What we do know is that it wouldn't see the light of day for another 100 million years. After the bones were excavated, Correa trucked them to his laboratory, where technicians spent months cleaning them. Correa called in Maria Gravino, a local art teacher, to carefully sculpt missing parts. She based her work on Correa's educated guesses and on bones the team had already excavated. Then, temporary casts were taken and transported to a nearby museum, where they were laid out alongside the real bones on a dirt floor to form the first look